Okay, so full championship programme on Tuesday and Wednesday. I wasn't really expecting to be doing anything for this, but there's a few chunky prices have caught my attention. So a cheeky Yankee, all games being played on Tuesday night as well, the ones that have fallen into, grabbed my attention. We start with Blackburn against Nottm Forest. We opposed Blackburn on Saturday. They were beaten at home by Luton. And I'm not really sure what the drift on Nottm Forest is all about. Presumably it's the absence of Michael Dawson. I think given how little that Blackburn were creating, less than a whole goal of XG again on Saturday against the Hatters, I think that Forest can cope. This is a team that's been to Leeds away and taken a point, been to Fulham away and won the game. We're quite fortunate at Stoke on Friday night. They got themselves back into the game at 1-1, and then from that point onwards, it was kind of a psychological battle that only Forest were comfortable, in the scenario that had been created in that game. But I just don't really get the drift on them. I'm really against Blackburn at the moment. I'm not seeing. I know that they're dominating games. I know that between both boxes, that they're basically doing okay in matches, particularly at home. But they're just not creating anything from game to game. So for me, I think a Forest team that's going great guns at the top of the table. I think Sabri Lamouchi's shown within matches that he can adapt and he can make the right substitutions or tactical tweaks that enable Forest to stay in games or get themselves back into games or just generally improve as games go on. I think the same thing can happen without Michael Dawson. So Nottm Forest are 5-2 at the moment. I think it's a huge price. Then the next selection is Hull to beat Sheffield Wednesday. Sheffield Wednesday are a team we were with at the weekend. We backed them to win at Middlesbrough, but they went with a specific game plan that really just took Middlesbrough to the cleaners. It was all about set pieces, aerial balls into the box. They scored 4 goals in half an hour at the start of the game, and basically only totaled about 1.4 XG across the entire 90 minutes, but all the damage was done at the beginning and they could just manage the game as they pleased from then on. We did say in that preview that the Sheffield Wednesday players were suited to the way that Gary Monk likes to play and wants to play, and that they'd be quick on the uptake. I still think that's the case, but I still think there's also work to do in terms of the bigger picture. And I think too much perhaps is being made of the fact that they've beaten Huddersfield away, who were in disarray at the time. No manager, Danny Cowley was in the stands. They nicked a draw at home to Fulham with the last kick of the game, and then they've done a number on Middlesbrough in the manner that they have. I think it's too small a sample to get carried away. The market's been with them in every one of those matches, so maybe people are anticipating that, that if that's what the market's thinking, they're basically getting in early, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think Sheffield Wednesday are a team now that potentially could be taken on in the coming games, because I don't think it's just going to be an overnight transformation. I don't think they're that good. I don't think they're promotion contenders all of a sudden. So Hull, for me, are a team that can unsettle the way that Monk wants to play. I think that Grant McCann likes his players likes to break lines quickly. He likes to get the ball out from the back quickly. It's not just about trying to break that into the final third. It's about trying to move from the defensive third into midfield as quickly as possible, so your teams don't allow, not allowing teams to get set. And Gary Monk's teams are all about being able to get set without the ball within their fixed positions and the shape that they want to hold. I think McCann will challenge that. I think Hull will challenge that. And in Jared Bowen and Kamil Grosicki, they've got 2 players who can cause real damage at this level. So I don't think the game plan that worked at Middlesbrough is necessarily going to work here at all. This is a Hull side that cut for in terms of aerial presence and set pieces. This is a Hull side that stood up to Cardiff quite well at the weekend. 2-2 draw, a lot of late drama. That's slightly a concern. They were moments away from winning that game. Bit of disappointment, a bit of drama late on. But I think Hull can cause problems here. I think 9-5 at home, I don't see an awful lot between these two sides. So I'm going to back the home advantage to count for something and take Hull at 9-5 as well. The third selection is West Brom draw no bet away at Leeds in what is essentially going to be a top of the table clash on the television. West Brom top of the table, which surprises me. I didn't realise that they were going quite so well, because for me they're a little bit undercut. You know, they're not quite the finished article that Slaven Bilic will want them to be yet. Yet the fact that they're picking up enough points to be top of the table already at this stage is quite ominous for some of the others in the promotion race, because I think there's scope there for West Brom to get better and better and better over the coming months. And you know, the weekend they were 2-0 winners away at QPR, and it was their first clean sheet of the season. Yet in the 9 matches they've played, 6 of them they've reduced the opposition to less than a whole goal of XG. Now they're not going to reduce Leeds to less than a whole goal of XG, that's for sure. Leeds, you know, all conquering in terms of the performance data, but I think too much can be made in terms of scale. You know, they are so much better than everyone else. I'm not denying that Leeds are favourites for this game. You know, should be odds-on favourites, but in terms of scale, I think once you get past a certain point with the XG data, I don't think it matters anymore. You should be winning football matches, and Leeds are at that stage. Once you start getting past 65% XG ratios, you should just be winning every week, and they're not. And they're finding ways not to score in games. You know, they're basically, they've created the last 7 matches, they've created 16 goals worth of chances, yet only scored 8 goals. I don't think that's necessarily coincidence. It's something in the process. I think there's a lot of young players in that team. I think last season they were projecting fantastic data throughout the season, but they definitely went through a sticky patch in the winter where, although the process was still good and still pure, mentally they just weren't quite there. And I think the combination of young players who maybe lack a bit of in-game intelligence and experience, with a manager like Marcelo Bielsa who will basically push his teams to breaking point because he wants things done a certain way, I think it's a recipe there that it can lead to some fun and games. I think Leeds are by far the best team in the division. I think they're more than capable of winning this game comfortably with a fair wind, and you know, putting one chance away at the right time can change the complexion of the game, of course. But I do think that you look at their home games so far this season, they've drew with Nottm Forest at home, beaten Brentford very, very late on. That was a Tuesday night game, or it was a midweek game. They then were sucker punched by Swansea late on in a game that was seen destined for a 0-0, where another frustrating afternoon where they weren't putting the chances away, and then a 1-1 draw with Derby, which for me is perhaps the most worrying of the lot. So, you know, there's going to be tension there at Ellen Road, because they're not making the dominance count, and every missed chance is going to be met with groans, and you know, I just think it's a tense occasion. Whereas for West Brom it's a bit of a free hit. They're already top of the table, a draw's more than good enough for them, which you know, is why I'm happy to take them on draw no bet terms, because I think they'll happily come away from Ellen Road with a draw. But they can just sit there and kind of wait for Leeds to leave themselves open at some stage, and perhaps look to pick them off. They've got the players that can do that. So for me, it's an interesting one. 12-5 you can get, draw no bet. I think West Brom go in there in good spirits with a lot more experienced players than Leeds. And Leeds might be starting to question their own process a little bit now. I think the price is plenty big enough. Finally, Wigan against Birmingham. I'm going to chance Birmingham at 21-10 as the away side. I say chance because I'm only going off a bit of a small sample here, but there does seem to have been a turning point in recent games with Pep Clotet. Something happened during the international break. He had conversations with the owners. He talked about his process at length with them, and then came out and was very thankful after the international break about the support he'd been getting from the owners. Bit of a PR exercise, but basically saying that, you know, that it's good that we've got this level of communication, that we're now on the same page and they understand what I'm trying to do, and so on and so forth. Now, the last few performances, Birmingham have been much improved. Just before the international break, they did beat Stoke 2-1. Came from behind to win that game. And then since the international break, there's 2 games in particular that have caught my attention. It was Charlton away when they won 2-1, and on Saturday they were beaten 3-2 at Derby, but were the better side, created more from an XG perspective. Those 2 teams, Charlton and Derby, are of a similar ilk to Wigan, and I think Birmingham can go to Wigan and win the XG And, you know, obviously, as the outsiders, that puts them in with a great chance of winning the game. So I think there's been a bit of a process change at Birmingham. I think something's happened in the last 2 or 3 games. They've been a little bit more enterprising, a little bit more adventurous, yet still keeping teams to less than a whole goal of XG quite routinely. You know, you throw away a couple of outliers, where 3-0 defeat at Swansea and a 3-0 defeat at Nottingham Forest, where there was just a complete no-show. They were kind of so focused on the defensive side of the game that once they conceded, they went to pieces. Discount those 2 examples, and there's shoots of promise there for Birmingham. I don't rate Wigan at all. I think that I make them the worst team in the division. I think Paul Cook last season called out a few of his players. It's very unlike him and his personality to call out players as just not good enough and not back them to the hilt. He did that towards the end of last season, so I was expecting a huge overhaul in the summer, which never happened. And it now seems like he's relying on some of those players who he had completely disregarded towards the end of last season and probably couldn't wait to get rid of. And I'm just not seeing the same level of passion from him in his post-match interviews. He just seems to be going through the motions a little bit now, and I do wonder if the end of his time at Wigan might be coming quite shortly. So for me, they're a team that's more, you know, you look at the overall data to date and the prices are right. If anything, you could argue that, you know, make a case for Wigan. But based on recent evidence, the past 3 or 4 matches, changing dynamics based on results to date and so on and so forth, I just think Birmingham are a bet here at 21-10. If they take anything like the spirit they showed in that second half at Derby to the DW Stadium, I think they've got a great chance of taking maximum points.